In a world of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. It's the David Knight Show.
As the clock strikes 13, it's Tuesday, the 7th of June, year of our Lord 2026. Well, everybody was up in the air yesterday, about the last couple of days, as a matter of fact, about what was happening with the World Cup and the U.S. soccer team, or as many people say, the football team. We won't get into that. But I think the interaction that happened with Trump is pretty typical of his character in many different ways. We're going to talk about that, as well as the relentless push for AI and what that portends for the stock market. We have a major metric for the stock market right now that is as out of whack as they've ever seen it. And it's been one of the greatest predictors of financial catastrophe. We're going to cover that in just a moment. We'll be right back. Well, again, as I said, this football dispute about the World Cup and this player that was ejected, I think, is so incredibly typical of Trump. He puts his foot in his mouth, and he makes things much worse for himself and everybody around him. And he did that as well with this. I guess it was a football in the mouth. First of all, he doesn't know or care anything about the game, any more than I know or care anything about the game. And I have watched soccer in the past, and when I lived in Tampa, they had a new American soccer league. I forget what it was called at the time, but New York had a team, Tampa had a team, and it was kind of a fun thing to do. And so we got to, we went there to watch it. They had pulled together a lot of players who were on the verge of retirement from really competitive soccer, and they paid them huge salaries to come play in the U.S. I remember the New York people did that. They brought in Pele from Brazil. And it was kind of interesting to watch because even though he was getting much older, he still had some amazing things that he could do. And it was also kind of interesting because, different cities would have coaches that were different and they would have styles that were different. For example, Fort Lauderdale had a style of soccer play that was very German. The Tampa Bay Rowdies had a kind of an English style, and so forth and so on. But he points out that he doesn't know anything about it. He doesn't know what a red card is. He doesn't really care what it is because guess what? Number two, the rules don't apply to him. As he said many times, he can do whatever he pleases. And if there's something that he wants to do, he'll find some obscure way to get around it. And that's exactly what they did with this. And the third thing that was interesting about this was the anchor baby aspect of it. Because the key player that was kicked out is a very excellent player who was, his parents were Nigerian and they were visiting New York on vacation. And the claim is that the airline would not let the pregnant mother board for return flight. So she had to stay in the U.S. and have the baby here in the U.S. It's kind of suspicious because she came when she was 7 months pregnant. I don't see anything saying that he was premature. And how long did they stay? Because they let her fly when she was 7 months pregnant, but then they wouldn't let her return. So I don't know. I mean, bottom line is he's an anchor baby. and it's kind of interesting to see this back and forth. You have people who were Trump supporters who got really angry at him because he's pushing right after he went to war with the Supreme Court over the birthright citizenship. He's pushing to have an anchor baby who is kind of the anchor player for the team. And so some of the people who are supporting birthright citizenship said, well, there you go. Just shows why we need to have anchor babies. They make our country so much better. Well, he was not only...
Yeah, this has been great for America.
Except they lost. Spoiler alert here. But his Nigerian parents were living in London, and they went back, and he was raised in London. That's why he was playing soccer so much. And so this is a Nigerian who was raised in London. He has no connection to the U.S. whatsoever, except that he was born in the U.S. And so now he's been used for their purposes. So what got interesting about this was that Trump contacted the guy who is the head of FIFA, which is the international organization that runs football, as they call it. Showing my American bias here. But anyway, Trump said, I didn't know what the red card meant, but I called up this guy and I got him to do it. And everybody is giving him accolades. You got Ted Cruz falling all over himself to congratulate Trump for getting this done. But the people in Europe are outraged by this. As a matter of fact, there's been a ton of memes about this all over the internet because everybody is upset about this. More so upset about this than they are about the Iran war, the Venezuela war, the pandemic, or the vaccine. This is the thing that gets them focused, isn't it? So here's one of the memes out there.
You get a red card. Nah, bro, I have the Trump card. I win. What? That's not how it works.
That's not how it works. Well, yeah, actually, it is how it works. John Cleese posted this with a comment. He says, Trump breaks all the rules indiscriminately. That is his MO, isn't it?
I think it was the right decision to reverse it. And if you're Belgium, why would you want to play a game and win a match, and then you win this match, and then everyone will argue you didn't really win it because their leading scorer was not on the pitch during the match. Maybe turning it into an international incident, I don't know. Maybe we'll bring it up at NATO tomorrow, or we're there with the Belgians and everybody else. But I just hope the match will go on. Everyone will be at full strength, and the winner will be the winner.
Yeah, well, the rules are the rules, aren't they, Rubio? Except it doesn't matter. It's like, whatever Trump says, I'm with him. I like my job. Please don't hurt my family, as we heard yesterday from The Reason satire. And that's basically it. You'll have this long list of sycophants. Rubio is first in line, then Ted Cruz. And so Russia's complained about this for quite some time. So what is this rules-based international order that we have, right? And they invade Ukraine, and I don't support an invasion like that, even if it is to defend the people that are there that have a strong Russian connection. Of course, Russia has a very long connection to the Ukraine and to Crimea. It goes back longer than the American Republic has been around. And yet, and prior to them invading, you had the American-installed Ukrainian government had been attacking civilians in the Russian areas for, 8 years, I think it was, but I forget when that started. It was 2014. Yeah, 8 years. And so they said, what is this about rules-based order and so forth? Well, people who criticize Russia for attacking didn't have anything to say about the fact that America attacked Venezuela. They had not attacked us. We don't have any claim to Venezuela. It's never been a part of America. How about attacking Iran, which we have done repeatedly, going back to overthrowing their government back in 1953? That is the basis. But most people say, well, for 47 years, we had since the Ayatollah came in. Well, why did they have the Ayatollah? It was a pushback against the Shah, the king that we put in, overthrowing their elected president. So we have different rules for us than for everybody else. And that's what many people have been pointing out for the longest time. But of course, Trump has no rules at all. He does whatever he wants. He says, I can do whatever I want. And he does, as a matter of fact. And so because of that, and because of things that we have seen with the arbitrary tariffs, he puts in tariffs because he's got a personal beef with somebody, or he changes them because he doesn't like something somebody said last night. And so people put up this meme, which is really pretty fitting. The fact that because this dispute involved Belgium, he was talking about, well, if they don't put our player back in for this game in Belgium, maybe I'm going to raise taxes on Belgium.
Today we're talking Belgium tariffs. Corner kick 25%, free kick 35%, penalty kick 80%. They score 150, and if they win, blacklisted. Believe me.
Yeah, that sounds typical to what this guy has done. It has no rhyme or reason outside of the fact that it is something that is his own personal power. If it's something that makes him look good, if it is something that increases his personal power, he's all about that. And that's the case with this. He doesn't know or care anything about soccer or football, whatever you want to call it. It's just that he wants to make himself at the center of attention, and he wants to brag about the fact that they won the soccer trophy. He would love to have seen that. Well, it is kind of interesting also because this guy who is the head of FIFA, his name is Infantino. So you have Infantino and crybaby Trump going back and forth over this. And here's the most amazing thing. I didn't realize this when it happened. But last December, FIFA, this guy, Infantino, gave Trump a peace offering. That's what I call it. They gave him a peace prize. Why would a football league give a politician a peace prize, especially when he didn't earn it? But they did that because they knew that's what he craved. That was what he was really looking for. Some kind of a peace prize is what Trump has coveted ever since he went into office. He wants the prize, he just doesn't want the peace.
Mr. President, this is your prize. This is your peace prize. There is also a beautiful medal for you that you can wear everywhere you want to go.
I'm gonna wear it right now.
Okay, let me hold. Fantastic. Excellent.
Yeah, that's the way you get what you want is you flatter that guy, isn't it?
Here's your participation prize, Trump.
A peace prize from FIFA. It's like, that's desperate, isn't it? I mean, he tried to, he pressured the woman who got it in Venezuela, and she surrendered it to him. It's so pathetic, and he has absolutely no shame about it either. The ego has landed. And so as all part of this, he attacks the ref, who was from Brazil. He said the referee, who's a little bit suspect. I don't like to say that because, listen to this, I don't like to create controversy. This guy lies about everything, especially about that. That's the only thing that Trump creates is controversy. He's not a builder. He's not a creator. He creates controversy and he scams people with cryptocurrency. That's what he does. But this guy is very suspect, he says. You know, it reminds me, I've said this before many times. Trump reminds me of, I remember when I was a kid, I saw A Hard Day's Night by the Beatles. And in it, they had this old man who was real flinty. And he was always gossiping, whispering, saying things about people to get the guys to fight with each other and to create conflict with them. And I remember seeing that as a kid, and I thought, I don't know anybody at all like that. And I never did until Trump. He's like the creepy old uncle out of that movie. Just he lives to create conflict. That's the only thing that gives him any joy. So yeah, Trump says, I don't want to create any controversy, right? Anyway, he says he gave him a red card. I didn't know what that meant. Then I started hearing that means he can't play in the next game. That's the way it always has worked. So I said, boy, that's big, you know. It happened to another player. That would have been unfair. See, I don't like the rules, so I'm just going to throw them out. It's one thing to penalize someone for a game, but how do you penalize them for a game that they haven't even played yet? Well, it's meant as a deterrent, right? Because they didn't want soccer to turn into something like, say, hockey. So it's always the rule with the penalty. He doesn't know. He doesn't care about the rules of soccer any more than he cares about the rules of the Constitution. He couldn't care less about either one of those, actually. But he does get his reversal, as a matter of fact. When you look at, this is another meme somebody put out there. Because the guy's on the red card and Trump is standing there and he takes it away from him. A lot of memes about that. Trump praised the reversal as beautiful. And he commended Infantino as a smart, tough man whose, quote, stock has gone through the roof. Actually, just the opposite. Now you've got people throughout the football community who want him fired, and they're working on doing that. So if Belgium had defeated Team USA in their round of 16 games without the top scorer, it would have been a rigged outcome, he said. If they beat us, they can be very proud. The other way, if they beat us, we'll say it was rigged, just like the election was rigged in 2020. But I won't get into that, he said. And so understand, if he loses, it's because it was rigged. Whatever you're talking about, that's always going to be what he resorts to. So my question for Trump is, hey, Donald, you lost 6 casinos. Usually casinos are rigged games and you can't lose. Who rigged that game against you? I'd like to know. Anyway, then there's Ted Cruz. Uncle Ted is always there with some kind of a cringe statement. Here he is.
Mr. President, I want to congratulate you on your historic leadership. The
groveling
document
sycophant.
on that wall just turned 250 years old, as did the nation that it created. And the bell that you just rang on the Resolute desk, I believe, heralds in that the next 250 years will be even greater than the first 250.
You mean the bell that I'm not giving back?
That
I am not giving back.
I think everyone knew you were going to keep the bell. And on behalf of all Americans, thank you for getting rid of that ridiculous red card.
Yeah, because we all care so much about that.
This is his interest.
He just earned the ire of the world yet again. Thanks for getting rid of that ridiculous red card. Well, the judicial body may decide to fully or partially suspend the implementation of a disciplinary measure. That was the exception that they seized on. They twisted it and got their reversal, but really it was political pressure. Everybody knows it. And Trump boasted about it, and he's got this long line of sycophants who pat him on the back for doing that, as a matter of fact. Infantino reassured that the sport's governing bodies are independent and operate autonomously. You want to believe that? He said their independence is essential to credibility and integrity of football and must always be respected. Well, he's right about that, except that they don't have any credibility or integrity anymore. And they've had a major scandal back in 2015. It's not the first time, as a matter of fact. And then he hypocritically said, whether we personally like a decision or not is irrelevant. Respect for independent institutions and the rule of law is what protects the integrity of our competitions and the credibility of FIFA at all times. Well, tell that to Trump. He doesn't play by those rules at all. And so there's a huge backlash against this guy, Infantino. Remember, Trump said his stock has gone through the roof. This has been great for him. Well, paving the way for the Royal Belgian Football Association to potentially pursue legal action. And they were talking about getting, first of all, suing about that, and perhaps even pushing to get the U.S. thrown out of the competition if this had not been, had not gone the way that it did go. But Infantino was spared a nightmare scenario when the U.S. self-destructed against Belgium to crash out of the World Cup. So they lost 4-1, which is a huge margin. In soccer, you don't have that many goals that are scored. The Belgians thrashed them 4-1 and averted a fresh explosion in this controversy about the ejected Nigerian. The former Liverpool manager, Klopp, and UEFA and the Federation of Germany and Belgium launched unprecedented attacks on the FIFA manager, Infantino, who has faced repeated accusations of cozying up to Mr. Trump. I wonder where that would come from. Would it have anything to do with a peace offering that he made him, the peace prize? This is our sport, not theirs, said Klopp. If Donald Trump and Giannini Infantino really sorted this out between themselves, it's madness. It calls everything into question. Well, again, people are more upset over this than they were about Trump's lockdown charade, than they were about his bioweapon injection, the GCI, the genetic code injection. But that's what gets people excited. It's the bread and circuses, isn't it? Infantino maintains that FIFA's decision was independent, unrelated to his conversation with the U.S. president. However, Trump puts his football in his mouth again. He says, I'm the one that got them to do it, he said. So he keeps on down this path. And he's doing the same thing with Giorgia Meloni, the prime minister of Italy. And after he mocked her and tried to belittle her and she pushed back against him, now he's saying, I need to get a court order because this lady is crazy about me. They finally figured out you don't feed the troll, though. There's been no response from the Italians over this. And he's going to be seeing her again. The reason he brought that up, he's going to be seeing her again as NATO meets. So, again, Trump got that FIFA Peace Prize, the first one. They've never given that to anybody before. So it is the inaugural FIFA Peace Prize. I wonder if they'll do any more after this, or if that was just set up for Trump. That was back in December. The British politicians are all, of every party, are complaining about Trump. So one guy who is a liberal Democrat leader says, no matter where it's held, the World Cup belongs to the fans, not to gangsters like Trump. He got that right, didn't he? Straight up tin-pot corruption, said another, the former liberal Democrat leader. Infantino must surely resign for this. Another, the former sports minister, said, it's an appalling situation where politicians and sport executives have ruined the integrity of the game. Infantino should resign immediately, and FIFA should hold an immediate inquiry. Trump admits contacting Infantino. The U.S. should not play the player involved for the good of the game, but they did. But it didn't do them any good. As a matter of fact, what was interesting about it was that the Belgium coach got very upset about this. He pulled out his 3 best players and didn't have them play, and then still shoved the ball down the throat of the U.S. team, 4-1. The Belgian coach, Rudy Garcia, positioned his team as defending the entire sport against Trump and FIFA President Infantino on Sunday, and he set up his team to embarrass the U.S. He didn't play 3 of his best players. He organized his team in order to frustrate the U.S.'s patented press, as they call it. So he wanted to prove a point after Trump grabbed the headlines earlier in the day by detailing his efforts to get FIFA to examine the red card that was given to, the guy's name is Balogun, I think, the Nigerian. His team account on X then, after they beat the Americans 4-1, they put out on X, they said, overturn this. Anyway, so the U.S. is now out of the soccer tournament. But Reason jumps in and says, well, Donald Trump just demonstrated the value of birthright citizenship. Not really. Because, they said, well, this kid, he could be the next guy like this, could be in a field that matters much more than a soccer field. America should not handicap its access to such talent. Well, the bottom line is that this is nothing other than something like the Olympics where they organize people on teams based on their citizenship. There's nothing important about that. As a matter of fact, if you want to play professional soccer, it doesn't matter where you were born. It doesn't matter where you were a citizen. You can go play anywhere you want. And this guy has done that type of thing. And he played for the Nigerian team. He played for the British team. Now he's playing for the U.S. team. But professionally, like I was mentioning the U.S. Soccer League, the same thing happens all over Europe. You can have a German player who's playing on a British professional team. There's no problem with that. I don't understand why Reason doesn't understand that, because Reason is typically about business and it's typically about marketplaces. And so if you've got somebody who has a skill or an ability, or they have inventions and patents, they can do whatever they want. They don't have to be a citizen. Citizenship is about voting and many other things, and so should not be conveyed for this. I think they ought to understand what free markets are about. You don't need to vote. It's not important where you live or where you're born. Yes, go ahead.
And this is the argument they want to make. This is the guy that they uphold as, we could miss out on this embarrassment. I mean, granted, it's not his fault entirely. This is primarily what Trump did. I don't know the situation of why he got the red card.
But even with him, they lost 4-1.
Yeah.
So, it's so important that we have the best soccer players in the world, isn't it? So let's keep this birthright citizenship stuff going. Again,
it's always the sports and the food that you hear for the immigration. But what if it was a different field, hypothetically?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've got CEOs of most of these big tech companies are coming from India and things like that. So if I don't know, they're there because of their talent. Maybe other reasons that are involved, especially when you look at what's happening in these big tech companies, as some people called it, the enshittification of all this stuff. And I got some interesting stories about what happened with a Waymo in San Francisco on the 4th of July. Truly amazing to see what happened with those vehicles. If Trump had his way, the breakout star of the U.S. World Cup run would not be an American citizen. He would be playing for some other team. But if we wanted to have an American soccer league, anybody could hire him if they wanted to hire him. What's the problem with that? To me, that seems like the libertarian approach. This whole idea of birthright citizenship, and I think it's key, and I said this last week when we were talking about the Supreme Court's decisions, I think it is key that we understand that people have rights because they were all created in the image of God. So even if somebody is here breaking the law or whatever, you give them the same kind of due process, hopefully, that you give somebody, even if you catch them red-handed committing a murder, right? You still give them a trial. And so you treat them humanely. You don't give people excessive punishment, all these types of things. You don't remove that because somebody is not a citizen. John Roberts said, this is about the right to have rights. No, it's not. Not unless your definition of rights is the Obama definition of rights. The left says, we have this idea of positive rights. You have a right to welfare. You have a right to housing and education. All this that's going to be provided at somebody else's expense. That's not a right. Those are privileges that are granted by government, and government, in most cases, are taking those things they say you have a right to. They're taking that from somebody else. No, rights are things that we have inherent, not based on what country we come from or where we were born, but the fact that we were created in the image of God. That is the Christian foundation of our country, and it is that Christian worldview that is at the foundation, without the particular dogmas of different denominations. Despite that, Trump reportedly worked over the refs over the weekend to help ensure the player would be on the field on Monday night. But again, they missed the point. The point is that the rules don't matter to Trump. The only thing that matters to him is to make himself look like a winner, even if it means that everybody sees that he's a lying loser and he creates nothing but revulsion for America, which is what has happened yet again. So there was a pro-MAGA sports pundit who was proud of the fact that he voted for Trump. He's now very upset about this. He said Trump pushed for an illegal immigrant star to play. So again, I'm going to root for the other side. I'm going to root for Belgium. This is tribalism on steroids, folks. And this is part of what the bread and circuses are designed to do, is to get you trained to think tribally as a group rather than treating people individually. So, you know, what uniform colors are you wearing? You know, are you the red team or the blue team? The veteran sports pundit said that Trump's request showed that he is a hypocrite on birthright citizenship, which Trump has called a great scam. He said, the man's not an American, he's a Nigerian, and he's from London. The commentator's last name was Whitlock, and he fumed on his YouTube show. He said, and if he was good enough to play for Team England, he wouldn't be here. This is a team led by a mercenary, an illegal immigrant. And it points to the hypocrisy. When it benefits our soccer team and we have a chance to compete in the World Cup, Trump is for illegal immigrants. He's for technicality U.S. citizens. And so, again, he was very upset about that. He said he was so sickened by the whole ordeal that he's going to root for Belgium now. I guess that'll show Trump. Show all those MAGA people. I want us to get eliminated. Well, he must have been really happy last night because we got eliminated in a big, big way. But the bottom line is that this is about corruption. It's about gangsterism. It's about the Trump regime, because that is the hallmark of everything that they do. And a political storm, so they created, because he's always about creating a political storm and stirring the pot. This is his rationale. Mm-hmm.
You know, he has that famous line, I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and my people would still support me. That may be true, but don't go after their sports teams. This is crossing a line, as the Sun said. It's all that stuff about war, that's all fine, but when you go after the sacred game of
Yeah,
theirs.
he can shoot millions of people with a genetic code injection, give them heart disease, cancer, turbo cancer, all the rest of the stuff, and they don't care. I mean, he's done far more to shoot one person on Fifth Avenue. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back. And we have a tip and a prayer request from IRS Machine Gun. Thank you, IRS Machine Gun. He said, I have some very difficult problems to overcome today within my family. Can you please say a prayer for me, David? I will also pray for you. That is the thing, isn't prayer an interesting thing? God tells us to come to him and to ask him for the things that we need. And he tells us to pray for each other. And I think that is so that we can see God working in our lives and the lives of other people. That's a very important thing. And so I would just pray, Lord, that you would help him with his problems in his family, and that he would see your work in his life, and that you would bless his circumstances as well. You tell us to ask for that, and so we do. And we know that whether it is a big problem or a small problem, you always tell us to ask you. So we ask in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Well, Waymo had a big Independence Day. We got, they desire to be independent of drivers. And so they got their wish. And in San Francisco, they basically created gridlock. They died on the street. There was evidently some large traffic there that delayed them. And they're saying they were sitting there idling, and it's like they ran out of gas or something. EVs don't idle. They do leak, though, I guess, because if they've got all these different systems that are going on, maybe they had air conditioning. But again, in San Francisco, I don't know if they need air conditioning. I remember the quote from Mark Twain. He said, coldest winter I ever had was a summer in San Francisco. So I don't know if they need air conditioning so much, but they got all these computer systems that are running all the time. And so I guess they're leaking down, and they got a pretty fast leak rate. And so they had several of them that just died and had to be towed away. And that is also not an easy thing for the EVs as well. So we're being told that it could take 3 to 4 hours to tow these disabled vehicles before traffic can move again, said one ex-user. One guy said he was stuck for over 2 hours. There was footage of stalled cars, traffic jams, and in one instance, a Waymo driving straight through an erupting box of fireworks. Fire or water, it doesn't stop these things, right? They've driven into massive puddles and all the rest of this kind of stuff. And
it must be interesting for the passengers as it just slowly goes toward the fireworks and drives over it.
You wonder if it's going to catch that battery on fire, right? Will I be able to get out of this thing, or are the doors electrically operated as well? So, again, big tech is always making things far more expensive, far less reliable, and creating a surveillance state or a logjam for what we want to do. And they're being rewarded by big government just for doing that. And just take a look, just like the depopulation shot, they're rewarding these big tech companies because they want to have autonomous cars, because they don't want us to have autonomy. They don't want the cars to have autonomy. They want the corporations to own everything. You should not own a car, and you should not have autonomy. That was a big hole in their lockdown in 2020, the fact that people had cars. So some vehicles ran out of charge while idling, says Business Insider. While idling. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know. Is it leaking down because of all the computers and things like that they have on board? But they don't idle. But I guess they did go idle there and for a while. But so we realized people were getting out of their cars yelling and screaming at these Waymos where there are no drivers. The car doesn't care. Travelers had to both bob and weave past the bricked electric vehicles, in which cases some of them had blocked traffic completely. This reminds me of when we got stuck in Buffalo in 2001 around Thanksgiving, Lance. Remember that? We went up there, and of course, Buffalo is known for the massive amounts of snow that it gets and how it comes very rapidly. And they had a record amount of snow for a short period of time. And just as we were getting there on a Thanksgiving, we were driving up, we were going to Niagara Falls. And it caught everybody by surprise. And so you had, we were driving a four-wheel drive SUV, but most of the people, I was surprised, in Buffalo didn't have four-wheel drive SUVs. They had small passenger cars. Because typically, the city has excellent snow removal. You know, when you live someplace like we did in Raleigh, they don't get snow, but maybe, once every couple of years. And when that happens, you're on your own because they don't really invest in any snow removal equipment. They might put some salt on the roads if they see a snowstorm coming, but that's about it. And so these people, however, were kind of dependent on the government. They thought the government had it. And the government didn't. And so what happened was you would get a small car, they'd get stuck in the snow, couldn't go any further. And now that car is keeping people who could normally drive through the snow, they can't get through it, just like this. You're having to bob and weave through all these things. Pretty soon, there were enough stuck cars that you couldn't get through anywhere. We eventually wound up bobbing and weaving our way through parking lots and things like that. And some of the people who had been kicked off of the interstate because they couldn't drive there, there was a guy who was walking and he looked really exasperated. And so we pulled over and offered him a ride. Turned out that he was a local and he was able to navigate us back through the back roads. And it's the most amazing thing. Once we got out of just this really small central area of the town, all the roads were clear. There was no snow anywhere. It's just the most amazing thing. But this is the same type of thing that happened, but in this particular case, it was the snow job of the Waymo drivers. As a matter of fact, there's a story. Did we cover that story about the wrong way Waymo last week? There was a Waymo that pulled up, and people got it on video. They had, 2 lanes going in each direction, right? 4-lane road. Well, it pulled up and it pulled into what was the left-hand lane of the oncoming traffic as if it were a turn lane, and it wasn't a turn lane. And so it pulled up there and stopped at the light, and then people had to go around it, and then it wound up running through the red light as well. It's going the wrong way. And that's not the first time they've had a wrong way Waymo that's out there. So the Waymo rider, Rose Peterson, said it was her vehicle that drove straight over the lit fireworks that somebody had set off in the crosswalk. She said, "We're pulling up to a 4-way stop. This guy was shooting off fireworks in the middle of the road. Then our Waymo starts driving. And we're like, wait, what's happening?" She said, I definitely think it needs to be more sensitive of anything that can come into the path of the road. Yeah, once you get that fireworks thing fixed, maybe then you can help Tesla with the fact that it tends to run into parked police cars and fire trucks and things like that. It has a propensity to do that. So now we've got the self-driving car problem solved. I guess we can look at some of these other high-tech problems that are out there. You know, the very first competition that DARPA did, and they've done several competitions where they have large corporations try to compete against each other to complete the task. The first one they did was for self-driving. So the Defense Department's advanced research projects really wanted self-driving. You might want to think about that. What was that really about? And of course, after that, they did another one. I guess it was about 2012, 2013 for robots. And of course, they always tell you this is not for autonomous killer robots. No. We're the Defense Department. We want to help little old ladies cross the cross the road. And so that's what we're hearing right now in terms of swarms of robotic cockroaches that, oh, by the way, are amphibious as well. They can work in water as well. So swarms of cockroaches driven by AI, just like we have swarms of drones that are going to be used for military purposes. As a matter of fact, the F-35 pilot who was shot down said, I saw this, he said when he was shot down, he said there was this amorphous like tentacle thing that was a swarm of drones that was the initiation of what happened to him. Avoiding that or something put him in jeopardy. But nevertheless, killer robots, this is a problem that's been around for quite a while. A lot of people are aware of this. As a matter of fact, Dr. Noel Sharkey out of the UK, who has multiple PhDs in electrical engineering and many other things, and he has been a presenter there in the UK on British TV about science issues, and he started opposing this about 13 or 14 years ago. Actually, was when I interviewed him. He'd already been doing it for a while. But good luck with all that. You know, now you got the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says that lethal autonomous weapons are morally repugnant. I agree, but you're not going to be able to stop it. I agree that war is morally repugnant, and you should only be involved in it in terms of self-defense and in terms of trying to stop the war from continuing. That is the Christian basis for a just war. But he said on Monday, he called for lethal autonomous weapons to be barred by international law. Well, that should fix it, right? We'll just pass a resolution and it's done. I wish it worked that way. If it did, we'd have a much different country, wouldn't we? So good luck with that when we got a military that is murdering shipwrecked non-combatants in Venezuela, that started an act of aggression against them, started an act of aggression against Iran. They don't stop. And of course, you got Lethal Pete, who not only does it, he's not deterred by international law that says that you will not attack non-combatants or shipwrecked people. It's also Pentagon rules. He's not deterred by any of that. As a matter of fact, he publicly brags about it and boasts about what he does. Yeah, that's Lethal Pete. So good luck with trying to stop these autonomous killer robots. I don't think that's going to happen. And he argued, he said, this is the idea, the UN chief. He says, governments should not wait for an atrocity to act. Well, we've seen a lot of atrocities, and governments don't typically act on that except to create another one. He said the decision on overtaking human life, quote, must remain forever human. Well, I know that's worked too well for us either. We've got far too many humans that are willing to take a human life, don't we? As a matter of fact, take a look at this. This is the latest outrage from the IDF, from Israel, their defense forces. This is an IDF soldier, and you see him. The car that he is standing by is a family car. It's got mom and dad and a bunch of kids in it. He throws a flash bang grenade in the car and slams the door shut and holds it shut. Look at this. He throws it in there, closes the door, boom. Look at that. Now, as I said, there were children in there, and one of the children has been permanently blinded. Did that to him. It's just disgusting to see this. So yeah, you know, this is a killing machine. These guys are acting autonomously. What do you think it's going to be like when they start using their robots or their drones or whatever? The problem is that there's no morality of the people who are running these wars. This is the type of thing that we've talked about this in the past. I remember. Yes, go ahead.
I was just going to say that the whole thing with these people getting out of their cars to yell at the Waymos that can't hear you is kind of a good analogy for that. Think of that, but war.
Yeah, that's right.
There's no one to show you any mercy with these machines.
That's right. Yeah, not listening. But, when I see that guy throw that flash grenade into that car, I remember several cases that we've had where we criticized the SWAT teams and the no-knock raids in the name of the drug war. You have situations where frequently they will throw a flash grenade in. I remember one particular case, they threw the grenade into the house, and it went into the crib of a baby. Third-degree burns, and just horrific what happened to that child. And just another example of the excessive use of force, the militarization of the police, and a cause that is absurd and futile. You will never stop drug use by prohibition. It didn't stop alcohol use. It just flies in the face of the Constitution because we don't have enough respect for the Constitution to even create a constitutional amendment to give us the authority to do that. They had to do that for alcohol. Everybody understood when they prohibited alcohol that the federal government had no authority to prohibit it. So they put in the 18th Amendment, then repealed that with the 21st Amendment. But when you look at something like that that's done with SWAT teams, as reprehensible as that policy is, you can look at that and say, well, they didn't know that there was a kid in there. They didn't purposely throw it into the crib. But this guy did. He threw it into the car and he pushed the door closed. Absolutely disgusting what you see on a regular basis coming out of Israel. And so Guterres of the UN warned that the AI is advancing at runaway speed. Yeah, that's right. Being deployed faster than anyone, including the people building it, can keep up. That's right. But guess what? He's not worried about surveillance either, because they want that. They want to control your speech. They want to control what you see. And nobody is standing in the way of that. Meanwhile, while we're talking about power grid and we're talking about wars of aggression, Cuba's entire power grid has collapsed now because Trump has to bring them down. And I don't know why. I mean, they were contained. Why? We have a situation like this. I grew up in Florida, and we had, I knew a lot of kids whose parents came from Cuba. They absolutely hated Castro. I hate communism myself. Nevertheless, Cuba is not a threat to us at this point in any way, shape, or form. I don't know why they have to engineer something like this, but again, they just can't leave well enough alone. They said, Havana is a case study in the failure of communism and how that economic system has never succeeded. Well, yeah, but we have case studies of this over and over again. Take a look at Germany, East versus West. One people, exactly the same. I mean, you couldn't have a better experiment than Germany or Korea, right? So you have East versus West Germany, North versus South Korea. You have exactly identical people, except for one thing, except for the government and the economic system that they've set up. And look at the radical differences between East and West Germany and North and South Korea. It's the government. It's the economic system. We don't need any more test cases to show how collectivist government, centrally planned government, and government that is focused on war, how destructive that is. And yet, we could be a test case for that, couldn't we? So, again, when you look at this, we've got every point on the compass has proven that communism doesn't work. East, West, North, and South. And if all this sounds depressing, don't go to a psychiatrist and get any SSRIs. They're pushing these things pretty hard. There's a Children's Health Defense article about how the antidepressant drug sales are on track to reach over $9 billion by 2030. That's depressing. As a matter of fact, they point out 17.8% of Americans are being treated for depression, most of them with drugs. Think about that. That's about 1 out of every 5 Americans. And guess what those drugs are? They're the SSRIs, the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And those are what we call murder-suicide pills. I've talked to so many people about this over the years. And when you look at a lot of these mass shootings, you'll have a situation where somebody says, well, they were seeing a mental health specialist. They were depressed or this or that. And it's like, well, they won't tell us that they were on Zoloft or some of these other things. But if you go back and you look at their history, you'll probably find that's the case. Some of the people that I've talked to over the past years, there's one website, by the way, if you know anyone who is considering this or if it's being recommended or pushed on you, first take a look at SSRIstories.net. They have, I think it's 5,000 or 7,000 personal stories of people who have been on these murder-suicide pills. And I've interviewed them multiple times. One of the key things you need to understand is like so many medications, they get your body adjusted to that medication. And if you stop it abruptly, you can have severe adverse effects. And so that certainly is the case with SSRI. And that's one of the things that they always stress when they talk to me about it. They said, a lot of people will get some real severe side effects, like they might feel like their body is on fire, for example. And that was the case with Kim Witzik, who I talked to. Her husband went to a doctor or psychiatrist because he's having trouble sleeping. And they gave him Zoloft, an SSRI. Said, this should help it. Well, it didn't help it, but it did make it feel like his body was literally on fire. And he was complaining about it. And she went on a business trip. And while she was gone, he committed suicide. She came back and found him dead. And she started studying this and found that, if you get off of this medication, it can cause you to get suicidal or try to kill other people. Another example from the SSRIstories.net was a young person who had been prescribed these SSRIs and was having adverse effects, a lot of adverse effects involved in them. He stopped it, and he went to school with a rifle. And he went into his class, he sat at the teacher's desk, and he pointed the rifle at the classroom. Then he pointed it at himself. Then he pointed at the classroom, back at himself, and so back and forth a couple of times. They were able to get the gun away from him and to take him away. And when he came back to his senses, he had no recollection whatsoever of what he was doing. These things are incredibly dangerous. Now, this article from Children's Self-Defense looks at it from a systemic, from a business point of view. They said historically, the perception of clinical depression as a chronic and severe condition necessitating medical intervention was uncommon. It wasn't considered to be a public health concern, and psychiatrists were not in high demand. But now they have a new profit center. They have the Ask Your Doctor fraud commercials that they can run all the time. So they said, until you had the mass marketing of antidepressants to the general population, bringing the profession back from the brink of extinction. Is the purported 250% surge in clinical depression genuine, or is there a darker and more insidious force at play? So, for example, if you've got a company, you're making sneakers, the example they use, and only 2% of the people are running and using your particular type of running sneakers, wouldn't you like to see your business go up by 250%? Well, that's what these people did. To expand the number of individuals identifying as depressed, one would initially have to construct the notion that depression is under-recognized and undertreated as a disease. This involves portraying depression as an unidentified public health concern, silently afflicting millions and then wreaking havoc on families. By framing depression in this light, a narrative is created to foster greater awareness and subsequently a surge in individuals recognizing and acknowledging their struggles under the umbrella of this purportedly pervasive and underaddressed condition. War, unemployment, loss, disease, trauma persist. Some may argue that the experience of suffering is intrinsic, a normal part of the human condition. Yeah, I would say it is. As a matter of fact, it was Jesus who said, "Come to me, all you who are laboring or heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Yes, I'll give you an SSRI. And that's the issue, folks. We are here in a trial. We are not to be constantly happy. We're to learn and to grow, and there's some pain in that gain. but there's also assistance in that. We don't have to go through this alone. And that's what everybody needs to understand. Instead of turning to the medicine cabinet or turning to a doctor for some quick fix pill, we need to turn to Christ. And we need to learn the difference between happiness, which is a condition of what happens to you, your happenstance or whatever it's what is happening to you, versus what is joy and peace. And you can have that joy and peace regardless of what is the circumstances that you're going through. That's the lesson for us to learn as we go through this life. Hardships are an inherent part of life, a series of inevitable trials that in their own way define the normal course of human experience. That's right. It's true, but they don't get into the whole issue of just how dangerous these SSRI drugs are, how difficult it is to get off of them. They say it's very easy to get a diagnosis of clinical depression. It said it used to be that was a debilitating condition that affected only a small percentage of the population, but now they have redefined it. And if you only get 5 out of their 9 quote-unquote symptoms, you now have clinical depression, and they'll prescribe for you some SSRIs. Listen to these. Are you depressed most of the day for a 2-week period? Do you have diminished interest or pleasure in activities? Do you have trouble sleeping? Are you agitated or restless? Do you have feelings of worthlessness or guilt? Considering a relationship ended and a job was lost, what else should one feel? If you have fatigue or loss of energy, do you have diminished ability to concentrate, make decisions, that type of thing? Well, when you get a list of symptoms like this is one of the dangers of trying to diagnose yourself by using Google, right? You start looking at these symptoms and it's like, yeah, I guess I do have that, You start looking at this. You only have to have 5 I just mentioned 7. They've got 9. So that's 7 of them right there that are pretty common. If you get 5 of those, yeah, you're a candidate for getting SSRIs. And you're a candidate for a murder-suicide pill. That's the sad thing about it. Kim Witzik tried to make some sense and some out of her husband's death and tried to change things with it. So she set up a place where people can find out about this. But she also went to work as, not as to work, but she is a volunteer as a outsider from the pharmaceutical industry for the FDA, looking at these drugs. And she pushed really hard to get black box labels on. But that's yet another story. Because they can put the black box labels on and not tell you that it's got a black box label. You don't see that. You have to be told that by your doctor or by the pharmacist. And if they don't tell you, you wind up taking these dangerous drugs and you don't know the real issues that are there, but they've covered themselves legally. The black box label is not there to protect the patient. It's there to protect the pharmaceutical company legally and to protect the FDA. That's what they put it there for. So they put that there, and then if the doctor or the pharmacist doesn't tell you about it and you're injured, well, you can try suing them. Good luck with that. That's the way this thing works. It really is a criminal enterprise. Well, folks, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back. Stay with us.
You're listening to The David Knight Show.
In July of 1896, exactly 130 years ago, I warned this great nation of the government's plan to crucify mankind upon a cross of gold. Of course, that was before they started to bleed us dry with the death of 1,000 fiat paper cuts. But after you bought every single commemorative David Knight Show coin in gold color, the podcast's gold reserves are depleted. They issued 100 numbered gold-colored coins and declared the mint closed. The people cried out, "Free silver!" Well, the likes of J.P. Morgan can't stop this all-new commemorative coin. Now in silver color, while supplies last, this commemorative coin does not contain precious metal, but does keep the show on the air. Equal to the gold color, this limited run is numbered 1 to 100. Get yours today at thedavidknightshow.com. Hurry, because supplies are disappearing quicker than the purchasing power of the dollar.
Yes, and we are all on a limited run. And just a reminder of this, we have what happened to Mitch McConnell. And I got an email from Handy, who we have gotten great information from Handy all through the fake pandemic, what was happening at hospitals and places where he works as an EMS. He's had decades of experience, and he has a Substack as well. By the way, I forgot what his Substack is, but Handy, if you're listening live, get us a message and we'll tell people about your Substack. And I want to tell you what he said about Mitch McConnell's cardiac arrest. Mitch McConnell's daughter has deleted her X account. She's getting so many questions about Mitch McConnell's health. And of course, he's been missing for a couple of months. He stepped down from being the Senate leader because of health issues. He had a couple of these issues where he was in the middle of a sentence and he just froze and, couldn't do anything else. And he's had a couple of bad falls and now a cardiac arrest. But there's issues that don't just center on his health that people are questioning. They're also questioning what his wife is doing, going to China and meeting with Chinese communist leaders. What is that all really about? And so let's begin with the health issue because, again, Handy sent this to me at the end of the week last week. It's on Friday. He said, Friday afternoon, he said, with the new information coming out about the 911 call and EMS responding to a cardiac arrest at McConnell's residence on June the 14th, the same day that McConnell was checked into the hospital, I feel like I may be in a better Monday morning quarterback position than your average person. I've worked many cardiac arrests over my 23 years. The initial 911 dispatch is reported to have happened at approximately 8:30 a.m. At 8:44, the first responding EMS reported CPR in progress. According to 911 logs, the first responding medic began CPR on scene and was later joined by other responding units. It was probably a quick response medic and police that were on the scene first. The initial dispatch was for a person who was, quote, found unconscious. From 6 until about 8 in the morning or 9 in the morning is when we frequently run cardiac arrests. That's because people began checking on other people after they wake up. And he said, I suspect that's how McConnell was found. In other words, he had had cardiac arrest, and it wasn't discovered until the other people in the household found him that way. He said to be found unconscious and in cardiac arrest doesn't bode well for a favorable outcome. Even witnessed cardiac arrests seldom have favorable outcomes. I can get a pulse with enough epinephrine, but the brain is the problem. CPR and pharmaceuticals can buy your body a little bit of time, but the anoxia does irreversible damage to the brain. I could be wrong, I wasn't there, but I have worked many cardiac arrests over the years. If I were a betting man, I would say that McConnell is gone, but his body is being kept alive artificially. I would bet that he's on a ventilator, and will never make it out of the hospital. And again, as I said, Andy has had a lot of experience in EMS, and it was very interesting points of information that he gave us about what he personally observed about the insanity of the pandemic scam, the tests, the masks, the paranoia that he saw with people. And he's got a great Substack there, but I don't know, we don't have that yet. But there's a lot of people who are talking about Elaine Chao. And now Elaine Chao, they got married when he was 52 and she was 40. And she has had high-ranking positions in the federal government, helps to have a high-ranking majority or minority leader of the Senate, helps you to get a job. And, of course, she had a job as a Department of Labor, I think it was, with the Bush administration, the W. Bush administration. And then Trump, in his first term, put her in as transportation secretary. So always find a job for her. But it's kind of interesting that within a short period of time of him having this medical episode, she left the country. Don't you find that interesting, that she would leave the country? So what authority was Elaine Chao acting under when she met with a senior Chinese Communist Party while her husband, a sitting U.S. senator, was hospitalized following a reported cardiac arrest? She hasn't held a U.S. government position since January of 2021 when she resigned as Secretary of Transportation. The Logan Act prohibits unauthorized private citizens from conducting correspondence or negotiations with foreign governments regarding disputes or matters involving the U.S. As a matter of fact, they got that, was it 2021? Did I say 2001? It's 2021, yeah, the Trump administration. If Elaine Chao was representing the U.S. with authorization from the U.S. government, the State Department should say so. If she is acting solely as a private citizen while discussing U.S.-China relations with senior Chinese officials, it raises legitimate questions about her. Now, it's also interesting that she's Taiwanese. Her father came to America, and she grew up in America, and he was very, very successful in the business that he created here. He's given millions, tens of millions of dollars to Elaine Chao and to Mitch McConnell. But typically the people that I've known, and I've known several people who are Taiwanese, and there's a lot of very nationalistic, patriotic people who really cannot stand the Chinese communists. The fact that she would go there to meet with the Chinese communists is, I think, very interesting. It raises a lot of questions as to what her relationship is and where her loyalties lie. Does she have loyalty to the U.S.? Does she have loyalty to Taiwan? What is this about? We still don't know the status of a sitting U.S. senator while his wife is meeting with the Chinese Communist Party. And so some people have speculated that there's something else going on with that. And again, when we look at this is always a problem with people who have dual citizenship who then get into government. And I'm thinking about the congressman who started, parading around in the halls of Congress wearing an Israeli IDF uniform. And it's like, hey, pal, take it somewhere else, won't you? It's just, or you see Rashida Tlaib. I criticized her when she won her seat in Congress. She and her family were waving their Palestinian flag and, that kind of stuff. It's like, look, if that's what you're about, go back to that country. I'm sick and tired of people who come here with dual citizenship whose real loyalty is to a different country. So she traveled to Beijing to meet with Chinese Communist Party leadership, including Chinese Vice President Hang Xing. So why is she meeting with them while her husband is still in the hospital? Well, one person has speculated, and I've seen several people speculate about this. I don't know if any of it is true or not, and there's no way for them to know whether or not it is true. But they are. There was a meme that was going all over Twitter, this particular meme right here that someone created. With Mitch McConnell fighting for his life, his wife traveled to Beijing to meet with the Chinese communists. 3 days after McConnell was found unconscious and required CPR, his wife traveled to Beijing to meet Chinese Vice President Han Xing. She holds no government role, having resigned after January the 6th. The former Senate leader is incapacitated. Why did she need to visit the second most powerful man in China? That is an interesting question, and I guess that question was being asked so much that it caused their daughter to shut down her X account. She didn't want to deal with it. Nevertheless, when you look at these foreign entanglements that we have with people, these divided loyalties, Dennis Kucinich has been on several shows talking about the upcoming merger between the U.S. military and U.S. intelligence with Israel. And it is something that we should all be concerned about. It makes absolutely no sense for this country.
Israel, busy on the National Defense Authorization Act, not quite in time for today's Independence Day. Integration of the U.S. military with the military of Israel's. What was your reaction when you heard about this?
Well, you know, there's a couple things. First of all, America's a sovereign nation still. And if we bring another nation we integrate that nation into our military, and it basically is being operated by both countries at the highest level of technology, you've created a merger. That merger does not serve the interests of the American people. It increases the risk of war. We know full well that Israel has embarked on a Zionist project of expansionism, which on the map includes Turkey and Egypt, as well as the areas that are now under attack. And, you know, people talk about the United States giving $4 billion a year for Israel's military. Well, with this proposal, Israel would have access to the entire $1.5 trillion annual budget of the United States in terms of being in a position to direct assets and resources at the top level. It really is against the interest of the United States, and frankly, it's unconstitutional. Now, you know,
it is traitorous, as a matter of fact. And this is the same type of pattern that we see over and over again. For example, when you look at the fact that the intelligence agencies are spying on Americans without a search warrant, they created the FISA Act, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. So you can spy on foreigners, but even if it's an American citizen in a foreign country, you got to get a warrant. Oh, we can't do that because this is all super secret national security nonsense. And so they create this secret court where they have one judge, and it's just a rubber stamping process. But they don't even want to bother with that. So they were surveilling Americans without a search warrant. Everybody knew it. Ed Snowden pointed it out, and you had Ron Wyden had pointed it out, and with James Clapper, when James Clapper committed perjury. And so what they do is they create a Section 702 for FISA. And this is a pattern that we see over and over again. The government does something that's criminal, does something illegal, and then they cover it after the fact. That's what they did with Section 702. Violating the FISA Act, violating the Constitution, they then create this act to legalize this. We've had a merger of American and Israeli forces. They've taken over our military. They got us into this Iran war, among other things. And so this is just a way, as I see it, for them to dot the I and cross the T and make it a formality so that, people shut up about it. But of course, it's also a dodge for Netanyahu because of what was done in Gaza, and everybody saw that. The public consent for continuing to give billions of dollars to Israel on a regular basis has evaporated. And so this is a way to get his funding without having to do anything particular by getting Congress to run this stuff through. I mean, they own Congress and they could do that, but it's even better to hide this from the public. And that's what this is truly about. But this government has been taken over by the Israelis. There's absolutely no doubt about it. Just listen to Mike Huckabee. When we get to 4th of July, he tells us that the Jews founded the USA.
I celebrate the heritage that as an American I have, thanks to the Jewish foundation upon which the United States of America was born.
Did you realize that?
Thrived. And I tell you that if the United States ever forgets its heritage and forgets the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we will not be the great nation that we have become.
You have forgotten the Lord Jesus Christ, Mike Huckabee. That's your problem.
When I hear people say, is it possible that America and Israel will split apart and will no longer enjoy this extraordinary partnership? And I say, no. You got to.
We're going to merge.
We're not that stupid. I hope we're never going to be that stupid. The truth
we're
is,
stupid enough to give everything to them. Let's get over this Judeo-Christian stuff, right? Do we talk about atheist Christian values? Would that make any sense? The Judeo values that he's talking about are as atheist as you can find. They don't just disbelieve that the Lord Jesus Christ is the Lord, but they denigrate him. They despise him. They despise Christians just like they despise Muslims and other religions. And so let's not talk about this Judeo-Christian nonsense. That is an oxymoron. And these people have rejected the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They have rejected the Mosaic Law. They don't practice any of that anymore. They don't read what we call the Old Testament, what they call the Tanakh. They know nothing about it. As a matter of fact, they're so ignorant of it that that's one of the outreaches to people to explain to them how Christ fulfilled the prophecies. People explain to them, well, what is this from? Isaiah 53. No, that's your New Testament or whatever. No, that's your book, Isaiah 53. And so it's because they've never, seen these. I played a clip of that, but it is very clear that, they don't read it at all. What they read are the opinions of a lot of different rabbis. It is rabbinical Judaism. It doesn't have the system of sacrifices because those were a picture of what Christ would do. And the Isaiah prophecies that happened were 700 years BC, before Christ, not the common era, by the way. And so all of this nonsense you had over the 4th of July, you had Ted Cruz saying, well, this is the anniversary of the raid on Entebbe. He just, these guys, again, they just like Elaine Chao, she should go to China and stay there. And Ted Cruz and Mike Huckabee should go to Israel and stay there. They'd be much happier if they were to stay there. As a matter of fact, though, you have some Jews have pointed out the dangers of Zionism. That's what we're talking about here. The system of Zionism. Constant conflict, war, in order to steal property. And it's not just Gaza, it's not just Palestine. They want Lebanon, they want Syria. They're going to be in conflict with Turkey as well.
The Israeli society had surrounded itself with shields, with walls, not only physical walls, but also mental walls. I don't want to get into it because it's another lecture, but I'll just give the 3 principles which enable us Israelis to live so easily with this brutal reality. A, most of the Israelis, if not all of them, deeply believe that we are the chosen people. And if we are the chosen people, we have the right to do whatever we want. B, there were more brutal occupations in history. There were even longer occupations in history, even though the Israeli occupation gets to quite a nice record. But there was never in history an occupation in which the occupier presented himself as the victim. Not only the victim, the only victim around.
Yeah.
This also enables any Israeli to live in peace because we are the victims. The other day, Professor Falk spoke about this dual strategy of Israel of being a victim on one hand and manipulating on the other hand. After what happened in Paris and in Copenhagen with the terror attacks, Benjamin Netanyahu came with the notion all the Jews must come to Israel. It's the safest place for the Jews in the world. It's a shelter for the Jews in the world. Which is wrong, because Israel is today the most dangerous place on earth for Jews. But let's put it aside. It was only 24 hours later when he said Israel is an existential threat under the Iranian bomb. And I asked myself, how can you dare call Jews to come and to join this suicidal project when the Iranians are going to bomb us? But in Israel, everything goes, and both declarations were accepted as the only truth. And here I get to the third set of values which enable us Israelis to live in peace with the occupation. And this is maybe the most crucial one and the worst one. We said victimization, we said chosen people. when I say victimization, it goes without saying we have to mention the Holocaust and the unforgettable Mrs. Golda Meir that the American jury had exported to Israel. She said once, this unforgettable woman, that after the Holocaust, the Jews have the right to do whatever they want. But the third set of values is the most dangerous one, and this is the systematic dehumanization of the Palestinians, which enable us, Israelis, to live in peace with everything. Because if they are not human beings like us, then there is not really a question of human rights. And if you scratch under the skin of almost every Israeli, you will find it there. Almost no one will treat the Palestinians as equal human beings like us. I once wrote that we treat the Palestinians like animals, and I got so many protest letters from animal rights organizations, rightly so. But by the end of the day, how many Israelis did ever try for a moment to put themselves in the place of the Palestinians for a moment, for one day? And I want to give you two examples which will demonstrate it. Many years ago, I interviewed then candidate for Prime Minister Ehud Barak. And I asked him a question which I try to ask in any occasion. Mr. Barak, what would have happened if you would have been born Palestinian? And Barak gave me then the only honest answer he could give me. He said, I would have joined a terror organization. What else would have he done? Would he become a poet? He doesn't know to write poems. Would he become a pianist? He's quite a bad pianist, and I doubt if he would have become a collaborator, because he is a fighter. And it became a scandal. Because how can you dare to put Ehud Barak to think what would have happened if he would have become a Palestinian? And the second incident, briefly, Second Intifada, the city of Jenin, the most closed city in the West Bank, real total siege. I go out from Jenin, I come to the checkpoint, a Palestinian ambulance is parking there with the red lights. I stand after him, no cars can get out of Jenin in those days, no cars can get in, and I wait. The soldiers are playing Begamon in the tent. Usually I know myself, it's better that I don't get into a confrontation with the soldiers because it always ends up very badly. So I stayed in the car, but after 40 minutes I couldn't take it. And I went out to the car, from the car. I went first to the Palestinian ambulance driver and I asked him, what's going on? He told me that's the routine. They let me wait 1 hour until they come and check the ambulance. And I couldn't take it anymore. And I went to the soldiers. It became a confrontation. But the question that I asked them, which really brought them to direct their weapons toward me, was one. What would have happened if your father would have been lying in this ambulance? This freaked them out. They lost control. How can I dare to compare between their father and the Palestinian in the ambulance? And this set of beliefs that they are not human beings like us enable us, Israelis, to live in so much peace with those crimes ongoing.
Here's the American values. All men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. That is the American Declaration of Independence, and that is based on a Christian worldview. It's not based on a Jewish worldview. They see themselves as the chosen people, as he pointed out, which means by default that everybody else is not the master race. And this is a formula for every kind of atrocity that you can imagine. That was the way that the Germans saw themselves. They were the master race. And you deny the humanity of other people, you dehumanize them. That's where slavery comes from. That's where abortion comes from. First, you dehumanize the other, and then you dominate them. You say they don't have a right to anything. That is not what founded America. America was the antithesis of that. To say that somebody is not born as a king and a divine right to rule over other people, do whatever they wish, These people do it as an ethnic group. That's what Zionism is about. The Jewish guys you heard there pushing back against that. Here is another this is a Jewish American orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Mark Perlmutter, and he was a volunteer to help people in Palestine and in Gaza, and this is what he saw.
Him witnessing 2 children being pushed into the mass grave by Israeli soldiers with a bulldozer, and then their cries being muffled by the dirt that was poured upon them while they were being buried alive. And then when the bodies were excavated, the red and green shirts of these kids, whose hands were tied behind their backs, were found. That type of monstrousness, that level of heinous behavior can only happen if your hatred is formulated by design from your birth.
That's right. And he went on to say, he talked about snipers.
You were saying that children in Gaza are being shot by snipers.
Definitively. I have 2 children that I have photographs of that were shot so perfectly in the chest I couldn't put my stethoscope over their heart more accurately, and directly on the side of the head in the same child. No toddler gets shot twice by mistake by the world's best sniper. And they're dead center shots. All of the disasters I've seen combined, 40 mission trips, 30 years, ground zero, earthquakes, all of that combined doesn't equal the level of carnage that I saw against civilians in just my first week in Gaza.
And when you say civilians, is it mostly children?
Almost exclusively children. I've never seen that before. Never seen that. I've seen more incinerated children than I've ever seen in my entire life combined. I've seen more shredded children in just the first week.
Shredded?
Shredded.
What do you mean?
Missing body parts, being crushed by buildings, the greatest majority, or bomb explosions, the next greatest majority. We've taken shrapnel as big as my thumb out of 8-year-olds, and then there's sniper bullets. I have children that were shot twice.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah. Targeting the children. That's exactly what this is truly about. And what is it for? Well, it's for land. And that's what they're doing in Lebanon right now. You got settlers there who are stealing the land in Lebanon. There's a picture of it. Murder so they can steal their land. That's what we're talking about. They've attacked civilians. They want to commit genocide in Lebanon as they have in Gaza. The same approach everywhere they go. It's amazing to listen to these people as well. When you listen to Netanyahu uses the language of the Bible, Amalek, which is basically saying, we want to extinguish each and every one of them. When he refers to Amalek, what he is talking about is genocide. If you understand what that was about in the Bible, you know that that is genocide. And then you got people like Ben Shapiro, who says, when he's asked by Joe Rogan, well, do you believe that Moses parted the Red Sea? No, I don't believe that. I think a wind did it. But I believe that that land is mine in perpetuity. It belongs to my people. That's what we're looking at. And folks, the reality is that we have already merged in terms of a de facto merger with this group of people, and it is not going to be to our benefit. We'll be right back.
using free speech to free minds. It's the David Knight Show.
All right, welcome back. Let's take some of the comments here. And I'm glad to see that real Jason Barker, who has Knights of the Storm, has Handy's Substack as well. You can find Handy's Substack at substack.com/@ihandy. And he has some great comments about what is happening with medical stuff. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment here. It is keeps coming back around, whether you're talking about new cancer treatments or you're talking about old drugs like statins, or whether you're talking about this guy who has spent tens of millions of dollars, and he's got a documentary that he did. His name's Brian Johnson. He's a multimillionaire, and he's spending millions of dollars every year to not die. And now he's been diagnosed with an incurable disease. We'll talk about death and attitudes towards death. I think it's very enlightening what he had to say. But anyway, you can find Handy there at Substack at iHandy. Nadlander says, wait till the Tesla locks you in and drives you to the cop station for a false warrant. Exactly right. Yeah, just like Minority Report, right?
Yeah, late last night I saw this thing. I didn't have time to get to you, but Discord, the messaging service, just called the cops on hundreds of, or I don't know how many, but a lot of their users for sharing checkerboard images because their algorithm falsely flagged it as child abuse material. So a bunch of people got a knock on their door from the government, local law enforcement, asking to look through their computers and things. Yeah, it was some weird quirk of their system flagged anything that was checkered, like checkerboards, chessboards, wow. Even spreadsheets or plaid images can get flagged as child abuse material.
Well, I guess if you get arrested for child abuse material, you have a checkered past. Maybe that's the connection. AI, I don't know.
So they got a ban, and then the police called on them, all automated from their system. And they say, oh, well, we'll review this and undo the bans. But they still got the police called on them because their system automatically calls the police.
Wow. Yeah. That's the danger of all this stuff. I mean, we've seen so many false positives. And when this happens, there's been at least 2 instances that we've talked about where somebody was in another town, another state, and they were accused of a crime because they were falsely identified by the AI. When the police show up, they're not interested in hearing the person's side of the story. No. AI flagged you. It's real. And that's the real danger.
Yeah, and those are on minor crimes. This is Discord told us that you were sharing child abuse material on Discord. So they're going to assume with prejudice that this person that they've now got in their system as a child predator is definitely guilty.
Well, one person they arrested spent like 40 or 50 days in jail before he could clear his name. And he had proof that he was in another state when it happened. Audi, Modern Retro Radio. Good to see you, Audi. He says, military reenlistment and new recruits are at a record low level. People have figured out the military is nothing but the killing business. Yeah, if you, it's not too hard to figure that out when you got Pete Hegseth just constantly bragging about how many people he's killed, regardless of what the rules of engagement are or law. He says, our military invades countries that are no threat. That's right. And it's not just that. It's the way that they conduct their wars as well. Doug007 says, is there any wonder that we're seeing so much crazy behavior in this country? The antidepressants are a huge part of the problem. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But now we're going to fix that. We got people like Rick Perry and other pharmaceutical cheerleaders. You got to remember, Rick Perry, people are saying, you've got this former Republican governor of Texas who's out there pushing psychedelics. This is really broad-based now. It's like, no, it's perfectly consistent with where this guy has been. He was the first one to push mandates for the Gardasil shots and to try to mandate that as a precondition to going to school and to push Gardasil for even young boys. That's the insanity that's behind all this stuff. They'll push anything. He's just a pharmaceutical cheerleader. Maybe he's a lobbyist for them. I don't know. But you start giving people psychedelics and, what was really the basis for when they kicked off this whole fear program of the war on drugs. It was like, oh, everybody's going to take LSD and that type of thing. Where'd that come from? You know, you've got these show trials that are happening now in Congress with Congresswoman Luna and talking about MK Ultra. Yeah, we should talk about MK Ultra, but let me tell you something. There's absolutely nothing that's going to happen from this. This is just a dog and pony show. Look at how long Trey Gowdy talked about Benghazi. They never do anything about this. They don't pass laws. They don't go back and issue any arrest warrants to the Department of Justice. They never do any of this stuff with their investigations, and they never change a thing. It's all simply a performance. That's why I haven't covered it, and I'm not going to cover it. May 2022. I don't watch TV anymore with commercials. Went to my in-laws, and there were endless drug commercials. Good grief, turn that crap off, yeah. I was amazed. We had stopped watching TV when we moved, and so it was in 1996. We moved to a rural area that didn't have television. They didn't have cable, and we were in a direction and remoteness that we couldn't pick up any broadcast TV either. So, at that point in time, we had video stores and that we owned and operated, and so we had more than enough to waste our time with movies. But so we really didn't miss it. But we'd take a vacation, we'd check into the hotel and turn on the television set, and it was just one pharmaceutical commercial after the other, and we'd never seen that before. It's like, wow, what happened? And that all happened at the point in time which we moved to this new house that was out there. It really is amazing. And that's how they took over the media. They bought them out. They get so much money from these pharmaceutical commercials that they just buy them out, and they won't criticize. They won't bite the hand that feeds them. A Syrian girl, my doctor's office makes me fill out a depression questionnaire every year. I go in for a wellness check. It's sick. I always mark excellent on all those leading mood questions, so I guess they know I'm onto them. They don't like me very much. Yeah, be careful about that. Once we get to the point where they start giving you Medicare and things like that, then you're really at risk. When we didn't have health insurance, we went with self-insurance and with the Samaritan Ministries and things like that instead of having health insurance. And so we would go in, if you're with one of these medical sharing programs, you go in and you tell them, I don't have any insurance because it's not insurance. I mean, you can get it instead of Obamacare, for example, but it's not technically insurance. And so when we go in and tell them that, over and over again, we'd hear them say, well, if you had insurance, we'd run this and we'd run that test, but you don't really need it. And it was great because there's a risk to any test that they run. There's always a chance that, you might get a false positive, and then it gets even riskier. But some of these tests can, in and of themselves, create a problem. A very close friend of mine had his father die of a heart attack after he had a stress test. And so always be careful of these tests, especially you got insurance that's going to pay for stuff. They can smell that a mile away. Audi, Modern Retro Radio. He says they're keeping McConnell alive long enough to cast a proxy vote for Trump and Israel's 2027 NDAA renewal. Could be. Who knows? Let's see. Doug 007 says, after my grandpa died, my aunt wanted to put my grandma on low-dose antidepressants. Thankfully, it didn't happen, and my grandma was able to work through her grief just fine without the meds. Yeah, how did people cope with that in the past? It seems like we didn't have the number of suicide mass shootings that we do now. I wonder if there's any connection with that. I definitely think that there is. No doubt in my mind about it. Bob of Atlanta says, I don't know. They say he's brain dead, but I think he's been brain dead for years. Yeah, and it really doesn't make any difference. Maybe there's going to be some votes cast on his behalf. They claimed that he had logged in and around that time, or maybe slightly after the time that he had the heart attack. So I don't think at this point in time that they could credibly make that kind of a statement, that somebody could use his ID. And they said that he he dialed in to listen, but didn't make a vote or something like that. So we'll see what happens with it. He already had so many health issues that he wasn't going to run again. And they're having an election this year to replace him. So if he dies or if he's dead, they won't even need to have a special election because they'll have the real thing pretty soon. Solocat 1980 says, before the founding of modern-day fake Israel, the Middle East was peaceful, relatively compared to today. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And C.J. Prumble says the Chow family's business ties to China were the subject of an investigation by the New York Times in 2019. Wow, I didn't know that. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, obviously there's some ties there. Tony Salvo says hospitals are using AI now too, and the lazy doctors will rely on it and misdiagnose patients. Pills are the solution for every issue. That's right. Acid reflux from our terrible hospital food? Well, here's a PPI. That's absolutely right. I lost so much weight when I was in the hospital. I think I lost over 10 pounds because the food was so bad. Just couldn't eat it. But yeah, isn't it interesting? They are not at all interested in nutrition. And even after the operation, I asked them, I said, can I get some vitamin C? No, you can't. We can't give you vitamin C. Give you something that is harmless and helpful. Absolutely cannot do that. Well, Brian Johnson, as I mentioned before, spent tens of millions of dollars trying not to die. Now he has been diagnosed with an incurable disease, according to him. But he is not deterred. He said, we are going to try and solve it. He's coming from this strain of people, these transhumanists, who think that with the right technology and with a sufficient amount of money, they can live forever. Newsflash, we've all got an incurable disease. It's called sin. And through sin, death came into the world, and the only remedy for that is the Lord Jesus Christ, but he's not interested in that. He's not interested in eternal life. He'd just like to extend himself out for another 125 years or something. And he has done a lot of really crazy stuff. He has an army of doctors on call that he's paying who constantly monitor all of his biomarkers. He has swapped out his blood with his younger son. He avoids the sunlight like a vampire. He looks very, very pale. Don't want to get any skin cancer or anything like that. So last week, this guy who is obsessed with longevity, and that's the key, just like so many of the transhumanists, people like Musk, Ray Kurzweil, Peter Thiel, all these people think that they're going to be able to live forever with the application of technology. They think they'll become like God and live forever. No, that's not going to happen. Anyway, he said he was diagnosed with an incurable autoimmune disease in which his stomach is eating itself, he said. And basically, that's what any autoimmune disease does. It attacks your own body. So it is called autoimmune gastritis. It often manifests without noticeable symptoms, and it can lead to cancer. He famously claims to spend millions in healthcare each year with his army of doctors looking after him. He put some of the blame on his unhealthy habits that he had when he was younger, like eating too much sugar as a kid and so forth. You know, we look at this and it's like, well, what can I do to live forever? We should take care of our bodies, but we shouldn't be obsessive about it. That's the key issue, I think. His medical team noted that he was chronically iron deficient, despite not appearing to be anemic. He's 48 years old, and he said he got an overdue colonoscopy. Again, this is one of those deals. Be careful about the tests that you do, because tests can cause issues as well. He said, when it was discovered today, standard medical care concedes defeat, saying that nothing can be done except managing the condition, no matter how awful, no matter how lethal the effects. He said he's going to figure it out himself, he and his doctors, and he's going to continue to not die. He's got a T-shirt. He did a documentary, and he wears a T-shirt that says, "Don't die." Spending $1 million per year, and he has an organization that he calls Immortal Care, right? Immortal Care. Well, no, we want the real thing. We don't want a cheap imitation of it. He said, in the age of AI, no condition should be presumed incurable simply because no one has yet tried to cure it with today's stack, he says.
Has anyone tried taking AI for this?
Yeah, he's going to cure himself with a heavy dose of AI. Maybe he's suffering from not just autoimmune disease, but maybe he's suffering from AI psychosis as well as gastritis.
Oh, yeah, sure. We can tackle that immortality problem. Let's get started.
But that's his God, isn't it, right? AI is his God. AI is going to help them become gods. And AI is the God that they turn to for everything, no matter how small. He also had a Netflix documentary called Don't Die, subtitled The Man Who Wants to Live Forever. Well, you know, that's one of the other issues when we look at it. If we go back to the Garden of Eden, as many people have pointed out, it was a blessing for God to throw man out of the Garden of Eden before he ate the tree of life and lived forever in this fallen state. This guy is just rejecting the offer of a much, much better life that is a gift. It's not something that he can earn. It's not something he can hack. It is a gift of eternal life and a life that is so incredibly superior to what we have in this life now. Not a fallen world. When you look at this world and you think about the fact that it's been like Rev 3, it's been cursed 3 times by God, various falls. Imagine what it was like at the very beginning. Imagine what it'll be like when it is restored. Why wouldn't he want to have access to that? Again, his routine, he's doing things like fat injections, blood transfusions, regular MRIs and ultrasounds and colonoscopies, and strict diet, sleep schedule. He monitors everything. Well, Congress has now allowed a measure that defunded Planned Parenthood to expire. Kind of interesting. We're talking about life and death. We're talking about how we treat kids. Are we going to abort 6-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds because they're not the chosen people? Are we going to abort adults? Yes, abortion is murder, and murder is abortion. And I, for the life of me, cannot understand how Christians can fight for an unborn life and yet not fight for those who are living. How do you call yourself pro-life when you are that selective about things? And again, we're talking about not combat. I understand that war is not murder necessarily, but we're talking about combatants who are doing that. When you target civilians, that is murder, when you're targeting civilian populations. And so Congress made a big fanfare, the GOP did, about defunding Planned Parenthood last year, but that was only a temporary measure. So now they can pretend to be pro-life, and they can also restore the funding at the same time. Meanwhile, the murder goes on at Planned Parenthood, the murder goes on at Gaza and Lebanon, and there is nobody giving a penny for peace, as Gerald Slinty pointed out. It's sad. He said last week when we interviewed him, he said he's not going to do Occupy Peace anymore because nobody cares about peace. They really don't. And they honestly don't care about life or liberty either, do they? A provision in last year, the One Big Beautiful bill blocked federal funding for abortion providers, including Planned Parenthood, but it expired on Saturday with no extension. They just couldn't get that done. Isn't that interesting? Couldn't get that extended. Maybe they had other priorities, huh? Abortion giant Planned Parenthood will again have access to government grants, which in 2024 amounted to more than $800 million. 39% of the organization's overall revenue. Think about that. $800 million the GOP just gave back to Planned Parenthood. Of course, they were not supposed to get any bailout money in 2020 either. Remember that? And yet they got it anyway. They kept telling everybody, well, we didn't give it to them. Now they're saying, well, we cut off Planned Parenthood funding. No, they didn't. If that's what you are voting for Republicans for, you may need to check what is actually happening there. In December of 2025, of course, they also quietly released over $65 million in Title X federal family planning grants to Planned Parenthood and to other abortion providers. So there we go. $800 million that they'll probably get, because that's what they got in 2024. They'll probably get at least that much. $65 million that they got from Title X. The Trump administration said, we're going to stop that. And so there was a lawsuit, and then all of a sudden, they never even announced it. Some of the pro-life organizations noticed that the lawsuit had gone away, and they started probing, and they figured out, oh, they just walked away from it and let it go. Yeah, that's right. So they restored $865 million to Planned Parenthood. And of course, when you're talking about pro-life, there's crickets when you're talking about wars of aggression or so-called God's chosen people. No, the chosen people are the ones who follow God, and you can tell them by that. So House Speaker Mike Johnson told Fox News on Sunday that Congress would work to pass the Save America Act. They're just not going to save any kids. That's why when we look at CPS, what a fraud. When we look at this Kids Online Safety Act, they don't care about children, not at all. And this Kids Online Safety Act is just an internet ID for all adults, pretending that it is there to help the kids. It's not there to help the kids at all. They have a completely different agenda. Well, the Trump administration did cut $67 million to Planned Parenthood because through yet another program. And you look at this and you think, how many different revenue streams does Planned Parenthood get from the federal government? I mean, we just identified three of them. There's the $800 million in grants. There's the Title X funding. And here's another one. This is the Teen Pregnancy Prevention Program, TPPP. And this is something that runs through the Health and Human Services, HHS. They notified the affected organizations, including Planned Parenthood of California, Central Coast, and Heartland affiliates, plus several state and local government health departments, that upon review, it determined that some of the curricula normalize adolescent sexual activity and are not age appropriate. You think? I mean, we've been seeing this in the schools, left and right, as they contain overly sexual, explicit, or pornographic content that is not necessary to achieve the TPP program's statutory mission. Yeah, if you are going to tell somebody that we want to prevent teen pregnancies, so we're not going to push abstinence, and we're not going to push virtue. We're going to give them pornographic pictures and tell them, don't get pregnant. And here's how you do that. And if you do get pregnant, you can go to Planned Parenthood. So they're getting the money for this. And we know what happens if you give them these materials. They are more likely to be sexually active. Highlights of the offending material include detailed instructions on how to use condoms and other contraceptive methods, discussion prompts on how to obtain condoms, discussions about being exposed to pornography at a young age, and stories about teenagers having sexual activity. Planned Parenthood is notorious for promoting ideas about underage safe sex, quote unquote, that is anything but safe. Examples include the chatbot app Rue, which is intended for teens as young as 13. It suggests that there's no right age to begin sexual activity and encourages birth control, Planned Parenthood sexual education. Executive Bill Taverner, who advocates teaching children about pornography, said flyers distributed to middle schoolers tell kids that they don't need parents' permission for abortion or for birth control. And so we know what this leads to. Obama even though he was adamantly pro-abortion, LifeSite News reports that even in 2016, the Obama administration's report from his Office of Adolescent Health found that across 6 different Planned Parenthood-backed sex education programs, they left students significantly more likely than controls to have ever been pregnant or to have caused a pregnancy. This is just common sense. And I remember one of the first cases that I covered with parents in conflict with school districts over sex education. Before we even got to all the LGBT pushing that is happening now and the gaslighting over gender that is happening, I remember back in the early 90s, there was an example that was up in Massachusetts, and it was a father who opted his young daughter, who was 8 years old, he opted her out of the sex education program because he thought it was inappropriate. It was too explicit, too mature for his daughter. And they did not want to opt him out, so he went to the school to take his daughter out that day. And they arrested him. And when they went to court, basically what the judge said was, your right as a parent is surrendered when you drop your kid off at the school door. We will operate in loco parentis, in place of the parents. And people need to understand that. People need to understand what is actually happening in these education programs and understand that it's the federal government that over and over again is funding all of this stuff. You know, we look at what is happening economically, and there are red flags that are going up all over the place about what is happening with the stock market. And one of the big metrics for looking at overvaluation in the stock market is the price-to-earning ratio. And this is something that is called, let me get the name of it here. This is the, let's see, I had it right here. Anyway, it's I think it's a Shiller index. That's what it is. And I'm skipping ahead here in my notes because I want to get this in before I run out of time. But an urgent sign of an impending market crash, and that is exactly what it is. Robert Shiller, and it says index. And right now, that is at 41, which means that for every dollar of average annual profits the S&P 500 has generated over the past decade, it's going to take you 41 years to get that back. You invest $1, it's going to take you 41 years to get that back. It is the financial equivalent, says this article from Futurism, it's a financial equivalent to a tide that is receding before a freak tsunami. You know, if you're on the beach and all of a sudden all the water gets sucked back out into the ocean, it's like you better start running because something big is coming. And that's what they said. This is almost a record amount. It is something, the U.S. economy is now in even worse shape than it was right before the infamous downturn in the late 1920s. They said for reference here, with it being at 41 right now, it's typically about 17.3. On Black Tuesday, the day that kicked off the worst financial catastrophe in modern history, the ratio was 32.5. It was 8.5 points lower than it stands today. And so when we look at this, and we look at the other issues that are happening with the U.S. dollar, what made me think of this was how the U.S. Government uses the fiat currency to bribe and blackmail people into doing these types of things that we're talking about. It's going to be a very difficult situation once the fiat currency loses its value and this whole system goes sideways. That's one of the reasons why you should think about putting some of your money into, as a safety net, putting some of your money into gold and silver. And one of the best ways that you can do that is with Tony Arterburn at Wise Wolf Gold. And you can get there through davidknight.gold, easy to remember, and he knows that you came through us. And you can set yourself up to gradually accumulate gold and silver on his monthly plan, and you can do it as low as $50 a month and on up. It's a great way to dollar cost average it. Thank you for joining us. Have a good day. The Common Man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity, created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at thedavidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. thedavidknightshow.com.